Look at what we have here. A ticket stub for the Rail 76 seat at Maple Leaf Gardens to see the Toronto Marlboros taking on the Cornwall Royals on New Year's Eve, 1988. But that wasn't just all there was. There was also an NHL game at Maple Leaf Gardens that night, which meant if you had a ticket to the matinee afternoon 1:30 game, you could go early and watch the Toronto Maple Leafs and the visiting team practice. And guess who played later that night? It would be the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Quebec Nordiques, the two worst teams in the league at the time. And the Leafs would actually win that game 6-1. But most excitingly, for me, how old was I back then? God, that was my birthday. My 15th birthday. I spent the day at Maple Leaf Gardens. How about that? And I got autographs. Before the morning practice, the teams would show up. The Leafs would show up one by one, and then the Nordiques team bus would show up. They would have the practice, then they would leave, and you could sneak into the dressing room area and get autographs. Then the Marley game, and then you'd hang around after the Marley game, meet the Marlies, and get the OHL team bus. Long story short, Cornwall Royals. I'm going to take a quick peek. 1988 Cornwall Royals. 31-30 and 5 ties. Not too bad, I guess. Orval Tessier was the coach. Their top scoring players. Steve Maltese. 58 games. He had 53 goals. 123 points. Darren Colburn, I think, was NHL draft. Jason Cerrone. Matthew Schneider. Big-time defenseman that would be in the NHL for years. Owen Nolan, who would be picked first overall. The 1991 draft? No, 90 draft. Newfoundland's John Slaney would score a huge goal in the World Juniors. Anybody else we know here? Chris Seigan, former Toronto Marley, would end up playing with Cornwall. Jeff Murray. Rick Tabaracci, he'd go into the NHL. Daryl Paquette. Something to clean off there. Who are the goalies? Who's the backup goalie? Daryl Paquette. So let me show you the autographs, because I know that's what you want to see. Let's start with the Cornwall Royals. Back then, I just had a pad of paper and a pen. And most junior hockey players don't know how to write. I couldn't write much with either, but I would at least write on the back who they were. I'm amazed I even recognized them. Most of them were kind enough to put their sweater number, so you could actually figure out whose autographs they were. Jay Murray. That was Bob Babcock. There is the leading scorer, Steve Maltese. First round draft pick, I think, in the NHL. Don't know why he didn't make it. There's Chris Seigan. Here's it, Segan. Jason Cerrone. 83 points, the top center on that team. Vern Ray. He's a stay-at-home defenseman who liked to go to the penalty box. Who's this chicken scratch? Todd Mondor. Dennis Laguerre, or is it Leger? I don't know. There's the backup goalie, Daryl Paquette. Darcy Cahill. There's your coach, best wishes, Orval Tessier. And number 23, Jason Cerrone. No? Jason Hannigan. So I got a pretty good stash of Cornwall Royal autographs. I did not get Matthew Schneider. And I did not get Owen Nolan. Do you know why? It was New Year's Eve. They took a leave of absence from the team to go play in the World Juniors. Aha. Now it makes sense. Otherwise, I would have had their autographs. That's pretty cool. And Tabarachi, I think he went to the World Juniors, didn't he? Anyway, Quebec Nordique autographs. Who did I get? Defenseman Jeff Brown. Put him in a separate pile there. I love these old Maple Leaf ticket stubs. Jacques Melois. Goon had been called up. He only played 5 games for Quebec Nordiques that year, and that would be it for his NHL career. He would spend many years in the minors. If you go to YouTube, type in a Jacques Melois pregame brawl, you're going to find a video of some fights. I just looked him up on Facebook. He actually passed away about a year ago. But he went down to Texas and played a lot of hockey there, and he was well loved. Got a 10-minute misconduct in that game on December 31st. We'll look at the box score later, see who got the goals and the penalties. Robert Picard, defenseman. Here's a young kid. They hadn't even made a hockey card of him yet. He would go on to score many big goals. Joe Sakic. A little bit of coffee stain on that one. All the way from Finland. There weren't that many Europeans in the NHL in 1988. Eero Järvi. Goaltender Jacques Cloutier. There he is. One of the all-time greats. Peter Stastny. I also had a rookie card that I got him to sign. Paul Gillis. Another Joe Sakic. How about that? Anton Stastny. There were 3 Stastny brothers. And one of them, Marion, would end up on the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I believe he retired in '87. Isn't that cool? Too bad I didn't have like pictures or hockey cards. I don't know what these are worth. I probably never will give these away or sell them. They're heirlooms from my childhood. So let's go back into that Leaf game against the Quebec Nordiques. Leaf fans will remember how terrible they were in the second half of the 80s. There's some talent on the team, and it just didn't quite. Now here's interesting. Former Leaf Walt Podobny was on the Quebec Nordiques, and he opened the scoring unassisted. Toronto got a goal. Paul Gagne from Eddie Olczyk and Gary Lehman. Ali Afridi from Donfus and Fergus. Daniel Marois from Donfus and Fergus. I don't know why they traded Donfus or Fergus. That's the problem. The Leafs would get these good players, and then they trade them away for people who are over the hill. Craig Laughlin was a nice free agent pickup that year. Dave Reed, Dan Daou, Luke Richardson, that was his rookie year. First goal of this, is that his first NHL goal? No, that's the second season. Luke Richardson, Peterborough Pete's, Gary Lehman, Eddie Olczyk. The Leafs really wanted Eddie Olczyk. They missed him in the draft by 1 or 2 slots. Then there was a free agent signing. Chicago signed Gary Nyland, and the Leafs asked the NHL for Eddie Olczyk as compensation, and they laughed in their face and said, no, we're sending you two minor leaguers for him. Tim Armstrong, former Toronto Marley. This would be his one and only NHL goal. Derek Laxdal up from the minors. Mark Osborne. Toronto Maple Leafs 6. Quebec Nordiques 1. Of course, what you really want to see is the penalty minutes. Look at this. Roughing, elbowing. Tom Fergus. Mike Huff. Brad Marsh. He was quite the character. A real fan favorite. Michel Goulet. Legendary. Is he in the Hall of Fame? I do have his autograph. I don't know why it's not in the pile here. Derek Laxdal. Brad Marsh again. Penalty box. Tim Armstrong. Hooking. Mario Marois hooking. Mike Huff cross-checking. Curtis Lecition high sticking. Eddie Olczyk high sticking. Walt Podubny hooking. Craig Laughlin against Trevor Steinberg in a fight? God. I can't imagine Craig Laughlin in a fight. Probably lost. Third period, oh my. Things got out of hand towards the end of the game. Brad Marsh with his third trip to the box. There it is. Jacques Mellois and Trevor Steinberg. He was the goon. Well, they were both goons. 10-minute misconducts. Paul Gillis roughing. Ray Richardson roughing on sportsmanlike and cross-checking. Robert Picard roughing. Mark Osborne roughing. Paul Gillis cross-checking. There's got to be clips of this game on YouTube. Wow. That's pretty cool. What a day. This is before I got into football, because December 31st, big bowl games. Back then, though, I was just hockey and baseball. And to be able to go down to Maple Leaf Gardens, spend the whole day there, meet all these players, watch them practice, take in an OHL game, sit right beside the penalty box at the OHL game. It's just unbelievable how much fun. And then, of course, this will be the last year the Toronto Marlies. Founded, I believe, in 1907? Maybe not quite that long ago. OHL team for many, 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 many years. And they weren't drawing. I don't know what went wrong. They used to be so popular. The teams barely drew 1,500 people to the Gardens for those games. Even with the promo, come down early, we'll let you watch the NHL practices. It just wasn't working. So the team moved, they sold them. And they ended up in Hamilton for a couple of years as the Hamilton Dukes. And then that didn't work out, so the team ended up in Guelph. The franchise still exists, amazingly enough. But hard to believe how long ago that was. These are the memories. And we did not have the internet back then. There was the OHL Game of the Week on television. And some of those games are recorded on VHS. And I probably have a few of those sitting in the shed. But there's just not a lot of... Let's put the camera on me. Here I am, age 52. The same age Gordie Howe was when he played his last game in the NHL. As a lifelong hockey fan, turning 52 and being familiar with Gordie Howe, it's a bit of a milestone for me. It's a sign that you're getting old. And I've been spending a lot of time this year looking back, reflecting on the fun times I had at Maple Leaf Gardens. I'm sure there'll be more videos like this in the near future. But yeah, Jacques Mellois. It's funny that you remember these names. And I remember meeting him. He was a nice guy. We all loved the fighters in the hockey. And when we heard that the Nordiques had called this guy up for the minors, I can't remember, he had 200 or 300 penalty minutes. I'm like, this is going to be a great game. We knew the Leafs probably weren't going to win too many games, but we knew there was going to be lots of violence. So yeah, big thank you. Joe Sakic signing 2 autographs for me. Jacques Cloutier, goalie. He was a little short guy. He was like 5'6", but he was really good for the Buffalo Sabres. I don't know why they traded him. Maybe Barrasso. I don't know. The Stastnys. The first game I ever went to was actually against the Nordiques in 1984. So yeah, having the Nordiques come to town was a little bit more special because of that. 6-1 Leafs, we got a revenge. Of course, my first Leaf game, they lost to Quebec 12-3. I think I've done a video on that game. But yeah, we'll sign off for now. Thanks for enjoying my memories.